Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Bryan Abrams, the original lead vocalist of Color Me Bad, and you know I got soul.
Well, Bryan, I appreciate you for taking the time out for this. Color Me Bad. I was just telling your publicist, we try to cover everyone in the 90s in R&B that made a huge impact, and you guys definitely did. So we want to get into the history and find out what you're doing now and, just talk about everything. So appreciate you once again for taking the time out for this.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for
having me. So, we got to start back from the beginning because I was just reading up on your history and there's so many cool stories from Kool and the Gang, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, so many key people that were a part of your career. But just take me back to the beginning with the group. Like, how did you guys originally come together and form the group?
Well, Mark and Sam, they'd known each other since elementary school. Kevin and I met in junior high. I met him when I was in the 6th grade. So we went to junior high together and we all ended up going to the same high school. And that's how I met Mark and Sam. I met Mark first in the hallways. There was a talent show coming up and we just kind of got to talking and eventually kind of started doing some harmonizing together and decided to do this talent show together. And then we slowly started bringing the other guys in and it kind of went from there.
Nice. At that time, what groups were popular at the time that made you guys like super inspired to start singing?
I mean, of course, New Edition, man.
Right.
New Edition was my group. Bobby Brown, Troop, you know what I'm saying? Ready for the World.
Okay.
So we loved doing those songs for like talent shows and things like that. And nice. The Jacksons, of course. I mean, the Jacksons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were really big into the soulful R&B singing even early on?
Early on, from the time I was a little kid, man. My mom played a lot of R&B records like LTD, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Commodores. Like I listened to, Luther, Freddie Jackson. Like I listened to a lot of R&B music.
Nice. That's amazing. And it's funny because at that time when you guys are coming up, the internet wasn't a thing yet. So I think the information that you guys have versus what we have now, like there's sort of a blueprint now on how to become a star or how to make it in the industry. At that time, all you guys really had was talent shows. And
MTV and BET.
Exactly. But
yeah.
Yeah. But even those platforms didn't tell you how to make it in the industry. So you kind of had to rely on your talent. There was no social media at the time. Like, what were your aspirations during those periods when you were doing the talent show? Was the goal to end up getting signed? Like, just take me through that.
Not in the beginning. In the beginning, we were just having fun. I mean, I knew I was going to want to be in some type of, in some form, be in the music business, whether it was a teacher or, I was even studying. I did classical music for a long time.
Okay.
I took theory classes and that sort of thing. But really what we loved to do was harmonize. Kevin and I were in chorus together from a really young age. So we were already into harmonizing and, practicing before and after school with the chorus and, Christmas shows and that sort of thing. And I got with these guys and I remember there was a Levi's commercial, The Shrink to Fit. I don't know if you've ever heard that commercial, but really cool doo-wop song. And we started singing it and messing around with it. And that led into us going and picking up whatever kind of record or cassette we could that had a cappella. There was a group Process and the Do-Rags. And they had some really cool R&B a cappella music. One of them was Daddy's Home. So we learned the Daddy's Home and started just learning all the old doo-wop songs and putting our own little twist on them because breaking was really in. And Mark and Sam could break a little bit, but I was a big boy, so I wasn't doing any breaking. I was really big in school. So what can we do to stop some traffic in the hallways? So instead of breaking, we just start snapping our fingers when we found a good little echo in there and did the harmony stuff.
That's amazing. So you guys are doing talent shows, winning talent shows. At what point does it become serious? Like, hey, I can actually make a career out of this. Take me through getting signed and all of that.
Well, even the very first thing that gave us a taste and made us think we might have something was when Kevin and I chased down Richie Sambora and John Bon Jovi were actually in the movie theater that Kevin and I worked in, and they were catching a movie the night before their show at the Myriad. So it was a big arena show, and they were in there the night before. So we waited until after the movie was over. It was in a mall, so the mall was empty. People just barely, a few people in the movie. So we started singing and asked them if we could sing them a cappella, and they liked it. And they said, "Hey, do you guys want to open up the show with?" It was Skid Row and Bon Jovi, and they let us open up that show. We were expecting to get booed, and we really got a warm reception from our hometown. And we were like, wow, we could get used to this. And maybe, those guys literally said they were interested in signing us. They wanted us to do an a cappella album and they wanted us to be an a cappella group. But we just kind of went different ways. Really cool guys. But once we got their attention, we thought maybe this is something we should start taking serious. So that's when we started working harder and trying to get more gigs like arts festivals and clubs. Before we were old enough to go into a club, the owners would sneak us in. Like if, I think Tony and EU, doing the bud, like those guys came through town. They let us open up for their show, but then we had to leave right when we were done performing because we weren't a legal age to be in a club. So anything and everything we could do to try to learn and meet people. We'd take cassettes. We would sing for groups, Lionel Richie, Sheila E., Huey Lewis and the News, Def Leppard. It didn't matter what kind of music. If they were coming through town, we were going to try to catch them and sing and see if we couldn't get some help getting out of Oklahoma City, because there was no music industry there or here. I'm still in Oklahoma City. So
right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like these days you have social media, so you can really reach the masses just with a click on your phone or on the computer. But back in the day, there was no internet. So, in your mindset, you're trying to make it out of Oklahoma City. Like, was that even a realistic thing for you guys at the time? Or was it just like, oh, one day it might happen?
For us, we were just I was the type of guy that, I didn't want to take no for an answer. Right. So when someone said I couldn't do it or it couldn't be done, I was determined even more to try to prove someone wrong. And as we started meeting a few of the artists that came through town, and they would tell us, you have something, you really have something unique with, the different races, different backgrounds. You guys harmonize really well. You're young, but you're really good for your age. So we knew by then that we had something that we could, we had something promising. But no, there was no way to really make anything happen from Oklahoma. So we moved to New York about a year after we graduated high school. We met the Kool and the Gang guys when we were still in school. We continued to fly, on weekends or holidays. We'd fly to New York, do a little bit of recording, fly home, continue school. None of our parents wanted to let us move to New York, so we had to finish school first. Then we made that move and lived in New York for 2 years and slept on the floor in a one-bedroom apartment, ran, recorded, and just chased down record labels until we got some interest from Giant, which was a branch of Warner Brothers.
Right.
And there they flew us to LA and signed us.
Nice. Those must have been some super humbling experiences in New York without a lot of money, and you're just trying to figure it out.
Well, and we were country boys, man. I mean, we're from Oklahoma. That's a big city, and I had never been anywhere. I think I went, my family took me to Padre Island once for spring. That was about it. I'd never been on a plane, never flown anywhere. And now here we are in this big city, and people there, boy, they would eat your lunch if they knew you weren't from there. You had to be, hard around the edges and have some street savvy to be able to, handle your own there. So it was culture shock for real when we first moved. But I ended up loving that place, man.
That's amazing. So you guys get signed, and I mean, just take me through those moments getting signed. You're in the music industry now, still new, but you have your foot in the door. Like, just take me through those experiences.
The hardest part was, so we recorded I Want to Sex You Up, and we put it in the movie soundtrack for New Jack. That it wasn't going to be a single. We were happy to just be on an album with some other artists that we had been listening to over the years. Latifah, Guy. I forgot to mention Guy.
Of course.
Yeah. That were one of my favorite groups. So Teddy Riley and Aaron Hall and his brother. Gosh, I kind of lost my train of thought then. What was hard was they weren't going to release it as a single, but the radio stations picked it up and started playing it. So the label came back and said, we've got to release this as a single, but they were still a little worried about the marketing and how to do it. So that's why there was no picture on the single, because they didn't know how people were going to see us. So we put the single out, and we had 2 weeks at that point to finish an album. So when you talk about fast and being thrust into it, we went from struggling and just really not knowing how or if it was going to happen to just one thing after another. The song being a hit single, and then finishing the album in 2 weeks. We started the Club MTV tour. And so we're on a major tour, and we're literally just barely into being 20 years old. You know, it's nuts, man.
Yeah. I mean, take me through that experience of like, I don't want to say overnight, because obviously you guys put in a lot of work beforehand, but just with that one song, it just skyrocketed you guys to the top. That album, multi-platinum, big singles on there. Just like, what was that for you, like as a young man? You know, your dream was to make it in the industry, and here you are fully into it. What was that like?
It was super exciting, especially considering the fact that one thing that I didn't mention yet was about a year before we signed, our management, Adele Day and Miles Sanders, they flew me out there by myself because they wanted me to supposedly re-record some vocals that they wanted me to do a little better. And the guys were a little nervous. I didn't know why they were flying me by myself or why any of that was going on. And what it was they had a meeting for me with Andre Harrell. I don't know if you know who that is.
Of course.
At that time, he had Mary J. Blige, he had Jodeci, he had Al B. And they were all hitting right, at that time.
Yep.
And he said, he said he wanted to sign me. He said, I want you to change your name. I don't want to sign the group. I want to sign you. I want to change your name to Brian Parks. And I want you to be the White Al B, is what he said. And but I was torn. I wanted to bring my guys with me. I'm like, I was a team player. I didn't want to give up on them, and I didn't want to leave them. Those were my brothers. I grew up with them. Yeah. So I actually cried about it on the way back to the airport. Managers weren't too happy, but they said, if you want to stay with the group, we'll just have to keep pushing forward, and we'll work on getting you guys a deal. But what I did worry about to myself, for one, was, did I make the right decision? And I knew in my heart I had, because those were my brothers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love those guys. Grew up with them, but I was wondering to myself, are we going to hit? Did I make the right decision? Is this what God wanted me to do? Like, I had a lot of inner turmoil going on. So when that song took off and there was no photos, so we're rolling down the window on the highway, screaming and yelling at people, that's our record, that's us. Nobody knew what we looked like. So to hear your played in New York City and nobody knows who you are still, it was killing us. Like, because popular. We felt like we had worked so hard, and yet nobody believed us when we told them that was us. So when we finally, I think it was I Adore Me, Amor was the next record that we put out, and there was photo. And so we started getting noticed. At that point, I was still in shock, but I was like, I made the right decision. You know what I'm saying? We felt like we had something that was unique because of the different races. And, the 90s, there wasn't, if there was racism, maybe I lived in a bubble because I didn't know about it.
Exactly.
And the high school I went to, there, Asian, Black, White, Mexican, Puerto Rican, it didn't matter, and we all got along exactly the same. It just seemed like that R&B pop crossover music back then. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's when R&B really started going from just being played on R&B to that just becoming the mainstream music. Like, that's what everybody loved, you know. It was a great time, a dream come true. You know what I'm saying? It was really, it was a blessing, man. I mean, I can't tell you how happy we were. It was hard work. It was a lot different than what we expected. I heard Luther Vandross say in an interview one time that it was about 90% business and 10% music. And that scared me because I didn't like numbers. I didn't like school. I liked my music, and that's what I wanted to do. I was just a big kid. I'm still a big kid. So, yeah.
I'm still tripping over Andre Harrell wanting to sign you to Uptown, Brian Parks. You could have been on Uptown with Jodeci.
Oh my gosh, man. It's
Wow.
probably didn't, because they would have ate my lunch, dude. Because I those guys, you know what I'm saying? Like I Jodeci, New Edition, Guy, and I guess maybe because I had my brothers and I was a group, I still loved my solo artists, like the Bobby Brown record.
Yeah.
Well, that whole album, man, I wore that album out.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to be him. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? To have all this stuff happening and to be meeting these guys. Oh, the first tour we toured, you know, so our mentors were New Edition.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Edition, Belle Biv DeVoe, Bobby Brown, just anybody from that. Ralph, when he stepped out on his own, we loved those guys. And so our very first tour out of the box was the Club MTV tour, and Belle Biv DeVoe was on it. And I'm, you kidding me? We watched these guys at home, and now here we are touring with them.
Wow.
You know, and Ronnie was a Scorpio, so I was happy because I'm Scorpio. So I was like, wow, we got something in common. We were trying to be so, I don't know if you call it fanboying or what it was, but we were geeking out and just still trying to play it cool because we were actually right there, you know, on the same stage with our mentors, man.
That's that
experience.
Yeah, that's super cool. Now, to touch on the first album, obviously a lot of what we have today, the benefit is we know what you guys went through in terms of bad contracts, not knowing anything about the industry, signing without reading anything. Was that the experience that you had? Because I know a lot of artists from the 90s went through that.
Oh, man, to be honest with you, we're still to this day, man. I'm still having to hire attorneys and go to court and do things to help find money that was misdirected, or, you know, straighten out contracts where, you know, for whatever reason, we didn't get the right percentages on our writers, because we wrote a lot of the songs, most of the songs that we had as hits. But I'm still, it was really bad. It wasn't as bad as when like James Brown and those guys, you know, Marvin, all those guys, like I hear those were like the really, really bad days. Stuff, you know what I'm saying? And I guess it was better, but we still, you know, got screwed in a lot of different ways, man.
Of course.
Not to complain about it, but I would say if there was any advice that I could give any young person, it's pay attention to your business. And if you're not interested enough, or you don't feel like you're business savvy, find someone in your family, find somebody that's a friend, or somebody that maybe your parents know that knows about business, and let them handle it and watch over you. Because if you don't, they're going to take advantage of you every second they can, you know, because it's a really tough business to be in, man.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, it's business first, music second. And if you don't learn that now, you'll learn it at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Bryan, take me through, because you guys came up in the era of New Jack Swing, which is like one of the most beloved eras in R&B. I Want to Sex You Up, obviously one of the staples for that era. Like, just what are your fondest memories of New Jack Swing and that sound? And, you know, Teddy Riley, of course, created that sound. And
all I want was zoom in the boom boom. All of it, man. It was 90s was just one big party.
Yeah,
is what it was like to me. Just a lot of fun. And the New Jack Swing thing. Here's a story that I actually have never talked about that was really interesting. One of our producers, Royal Dayan, was one of our manager's brothers, but he mentored Teddy. Like he worked with Teddy and taught Teddy how to play keys and program drums and beats and that whole thing. So I didn't really know it at the time. But I started finding out later that this guy that was producing some of the records that we were working on, he started talking about Teddy Riley. Man, we almost got signed. Teddy almost signed us. Our managers wanted a little too much control or whatever, because Royal, the producer I'm telling you about, he actually set up a meeting with Teddy, and Teddy wanted to sign us. Like, this is got our deal too. Nobody knows about this stuff. To release Thinking Back first. He wanted to put a hip hop beat on that record and flip it a little bit different. And he was ready to sign us. And our managers were like, they were afraid to give him more control than they had. I think probably what they were worried about is if he got involved, that they would lose us, which they did anyway, for kind of, you know, there was some bad decisions made, but, you know, I guess they did the best they could. But yeah, so there was the Teddy, thing that almost happened too. So can you imagine being those kids
Right.
and being in the same studio or in that room with Teddy Riley or uh, 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 Andre Harrell, and
Right.
then deals not happening and just like freaking out, thinking these are once in a lifetime opportunities. We're never going to get this shot again. So we
Right.
Eddie thing, we were depressed for months because we thought that was our chance and it's blown. So,
Wow.
if there was a lot of roller coaster ups and downs that made that business really tough to deal with on your psyche,
Yeah. Was that Teddy Riley situation, was that before Blackstreet or was it during Blackstreet?
It was before Blackstreet.
Wow. So that could have been a thing before. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually before Blackstreet, not too long before.
Wow.
So it was still when Guy was kind of doing their thing. And I think he had started producing a lot of other artists and that sort of thing. So I think we were one of those groups or artists that he wanted to make a project and see what he could do with it. And it just didn't happen. But I'm still, from what I hear, I might be working with Teddy soon.
Oh, wow.
Guys that are real close to him. And I'm hoping that I might get to do a little with Teddy, because that'll be like a homecoming in itself, the New Jack Swing, and getting to go back instead of changing up the sounds and trying to get with the times and be current. I think it's better to just kind of continue to do what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of groups that are trying to mimic that 90s sound. People are pulling up old 90s drum sounds and programs and trying to do that sort of thing. So why not, get with a producer that was the master of all that and start do some new stuff,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Bryan, take me to the second Color Me Bad album, Time and Chance, because I'll give you the time frame here. This is 1994. And, just from listening to the music, that's when music started to change a little bit. I think New Jack Swing started to fade out a little bit because, Mary had dropped her albums, Jodeci had dropped their album, and it became more hip hop influenced.
Yeah.
What was that time period like for you guys, figuring out if you were going to adjust to the new sound, if you're going to stick with the original sound? Like, what was that time like?
It was exciting to us because that's kind of the way we wanted to go anyway. But we had people within the record label that were kind of bumping heads with themselves. We had Under Mills, we had Urban Azoff, we had, the pop department and the R&B department. And we always felt like we were more R&B. Yes, we sang pop melodies and we liked pop hooks and that sort of thing. But the heart of it was R&B, crossover type stuff. And because it started getting a little harder, we were excited about it, but we were kind of conflicted. We didn't know what to do because we didn't want to miss that boat and not get a chance to do some of that. But we didn't want to tick radio stations off. There was back then, I don't know if it's the same now, but back then there was a lot of tension between pop and R&B radio.
Yeah.
Catered to one more than the other. The other one might not pick up your record or next single. It was and we were just kids, man. We just wanted to make good music and get played. So we wanted to do it all. We tried a little bit of that stuff. We ended up working with DJ Pooh, who did a lot of Ice Cube stuff. Awesome producer, man, and funny as hell. The guy's super funny. And so to be in the studio with him and to do a video with Cube and be in a studio and you could cut the smoke, it was so thick in there, man. And here we're these like corny country boys from Oklahoma City in LA recording with some pretty iconic type people. So it was a fun time, even though it was changing. It was fun to be a part of that or to be in the middle of it and watch it happen.
Right. The second album doesn't do as well as the first one. What was that time like for you guys? Because like I said early on, you guys like blew up right off the gate, and then reality kind of hits on that second album and you guys aren't doing 3 million. It's, you guys hit gold at that point. Like, was that frustrating for you guys? Because you had mentioned label heads were bumping heads on which direction to take you guys, and like there must have been some like, hey, we should have done it this way.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. Like they tried to push what they did. I think they tried to push that record. God, I'm trying to remember what even the first single was off of that. Was it Time and Chance?
Yeah.
Time and Chance. Okay,
Yeah.
so they were really fighting about what they wanted to release first on that record. And we had always heard about the Sophomore Jinx
Mm-hmm.
and that thing, So we honestly, man, we didn't know what to think. We were still happy that we were just still a part of the business. Of course, we wanted to be, throwing out number ones and that whole thing, but we stayed really busy. While that album didn't do so well here, we toured for some years overseas a lot.
Yeah.
We were seeing other countries and doing big shows and working with some pretty cool artists. So we were still enjoying ourselves and just living that dream pretty much,
Man, that's pretty amazing. I want to fast forward here to the third album, Now and Forever. Now, I actually really love this album. You guys went in a really heavy like R&B route with this one. You guys worked with Robin Thicke early on, Boys to Men. Like, take me to that album.
I think we worked with Tricky and Sep, I think, on that.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's how we met Rob.
Yeah.
That was probably one of my favorite records.
Yep.
That was one of my favorite records, man. That's when I think we were really coming into our own. We were confident in the decisions we were making and in our vocals. And we were actually, I think, the record labels were kind of loosening up on us and letting us be more creative too at the same time. It was the only heartbreaking thing for me during that album was the Sexual Capacity record, because people don't know that when we cut that originally with Rob, the hook was Fly Me to the Moon. Every day and night, I can't wait to get you off. Like, I'm afraid that you're loving me. It was Frank Sinatra's Fly Me, Fly Me. I want to sing upon the star. And he wouldn't approve it. We had that hook that Rob brought us for that song, and that hook made that record. That was going to be the single. And Frank Sinatra's people didn't like the idea of Fly Me to the Moon being flipped into a Sexual Capacity, which understandably so. So we had to change the hook. Rob rewrote the hook, and we still loved the song, but it wasn't the same song as it was. So we were like, oh my God, that was the song of the album to me. And it didn't happen because of some politics. So, but everything else about it was, God, there was a lot of really good songs on that album. I loved that.
Yeah. The record that Boys to Men guys did for you guys, I love that one. Just take me through
For All Eternity.
Yeah, that was a great song. Take me through.
That was a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah.
John B was that dude is like prodigy, man. Yeah. He is a brilliant writer and producer for sure.
Yeah. And then of course Robin Thicke early on as well. This is even before he got signed.
Yeah, we were like, where were these white boys coming from? Like some original kind of guys, R&B and the white thing. I think George Michael did a little R&B, but I can remember thinking that John was black until I met him. And so, and where's John B? And he's like, that's me, man. I was like, no way. And then Rob walked in, and he was just a little chubby white boy with a white T-shirt on, and I had no clue that dude could blow the way he was blowing. I think when we met him, he was only 14 or 15 years. He was young and right hits with Tricky and Sep, man. So I knew he was going to be big. I knew he was going to have his day because he was, I guess that's the thing out in LA. They were growing them quick. Like they were good when they were young. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Exactly. So the last Color Me Bad album is Awakening, has the hit single Remember When. I had a chance to check out this album recently, and it kind of shifted you guys, I feel like, more to a poppy direction. I want to say that's when like the boy band era started with Backstreet and NSYNC. Yeah.
Tell you what happened, and the most interesting thing about that entire album, I hope I don't get a hit put out on me for this. But, whenever we got signed, Tommy Mottola was heading up Sony at the time, and Tommy and Irvin, they were kind of, always competing against one another for the big hits and the big artists and that sort of thing. So Tommy wanted to sign us and bought us out from Giant, and we were ready to go because we didn't feel like we were being pushed and supported the way we should be, because that last album we did for Giant, here we are touring and people were coming up to us and saying, when is your album coming out? Like,
Yeah.
That's when we knew there was some red flags. But anyway, so the first thing that happens when we go to meet Tommy Mottola, he invited us to a restaurant. We didn't know that he was having problems with Mariah, like him and Mariah problems, and they were about to go through a divorce. Right. Hence the song, "Remember When I Could See Forever in Your Eyes."
Wow.
That song to Mariah. Every single time he would invite us somewhere, he would ask us in the middle of the restaurant or wherever it might be to sing some of that song. And he was trying to save that relationship with Mariah. And that song was like his anthem, "Remember When." So he was putting that record, and I think he was blinded by love. And because that by far was not the song that needed to be released first, man. There were so many other good songs on that record. I'm not knocking that record, but it was very, very pop, almost adult contemporary. And it was not what we wanted to release as a first single. So interestingly enough, that song was released first because of Tommy Mottola and Mariah, what they were going through, and him being in love and wanting to like dedicate that song to her.
That's really interesting. That's a really cool story. And it's really cool just to hear, the history of the group and just talking about the decisions that were made. Like I had a chance to speak for another group from the 90s, All for One. And it was funny because, Jamie had told me that they had to make a conscious decision on whether to go pop or R&B. Like the label gave them a choice. You're either going this way or you're going that way. There's no in between. So it kind of coincides with what you were talking about earlier. Like you didn't really have a choice at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're young and you're just kind of breaking out, you gotta listen to the people in charge, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Maybe earlier on in the 60s and 70s, groups would fight that. But by the time we were in a place where we were ready to put some records out and we got the opportunities, we certainly weren't going to blow it by saying, "No, I don't agree with you, so send me home." We were like, "No, what you want us to do, we're going to do." We were cheesy young kids and we wanted to be famous, man. So we were going to do whatever we needed to do. It sounds stupid. And it was really, we made some bad decisions, but I don't think we made bad decisions by going along with what a label was wanting us to do. I mean, they had the track record, they were the hit makers. And so we were, as long as they were letting us write and sing. I mean, Milli Vanilli was also one that happened back then. And so we were just happy that we were even being allowed to do what we do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Music, whether it was pop or R&B, R&B was my heart, but good music is good music. It doesn't matter 100%. If it's a song or an R&B song or pop song.
100%. Bryan, I want to touch on life after Color Me Badd. You guys dropped your last album. Just take me through that transition of going from being on top of the world, selling records, being on tour, to that down period where you have to figure it out again.
It was tough, man. That was super tough time because we really didn't feel like we understood what was going on. Music was changing a lot. The labels, things were happening. When we signed with Sony, the other crazy thing that happened during that time was right after we signed, literally like within a couple of weeks of us signing, Ron Sweeney, I don't know if you know him, but he's the one who signed us to Sony through Tommy. He's the one that brought us through because we had some history with Ron Sweeney as well. He's the one that signed us, and he went on vacation right after we were signed, and they started dropping artists off of Sony like flies, dropping this one, canceling this album, dropping this one. And then the rumor started that when Ron Sweeney came back, he wasn't going to be staying with Sony. And we were like, that's the main reason why we're here. He had our back. He was going to make sure that we got to do what we were told we were going to do. And so when we found out he was leaving, we kind of knew that was going to be the end of things. And it just fell apart from there. And I mean, understandably so, because I was kind of falling apart by then too, man. That's when I had started drinking really heavily and getting depressed. I wasn't really happy with certain things that were going on in my life and in the music business. And so I don't know if things had panned out, if I would have been able to handle it anyway,
Yeah. Would you say that
for a reason,
Absolutely. Would you say some of those challenges, and we'll talk about your personal experiences and how you overcame it after. Do you think a lot of that had to do maybe with the success? Because I know success and fame is a tough thing to deal with. Was that a contributing factor at all?
I think a lot of it, it played a part for sure.
Okay.
But it all was upbringing,
Mm.
child things going on, not having a father in my life. My father was actually murdered when I was 2, not to get too on you, but
Right.
I kind of went through some things, you know what I'm saying? And so, being an overweight kid, what people don't know is before we signed a record deal, I was a really heavy kid. Like I was close to around 400 pounds in high school. Like we were really like the Force MDs, and I was the big guy.
Right.
No joke. I was big boy. And so even though I had lost all that weight and we got these record deals and we were up there on that stage performing, inside I was scared to death, man. I was loving being famous and loving having hit records, but I was so insecure about my appearance that, eventually I, stumbled across drinking and that sort of stuff before shows because I was just scared to death. I was still that big kid inside. So it was tough on your mental psyche to be in a position like that and come from where you came from and struggle with your own self-confidence and that sort of thing. Sorry for getting heavy on you, but
no,
I just
absolutely. No, it's really inspiring to hear your story. And just talking to you now, you seem to be in a much better place. You're going to be dropping new music soon. Like, just, I guess, talk to me about just the journey to getting to this point.
Man, I'm in my 3rd year of sobriety. I decided, when things kind of came to a head, I decided that what was best for me was to take a step back and to just focus on getting sober, man, because I know it wouldn't matter whether or not I had a hit record. I had a family that was being neglected at home. I had a wife and daughters at home. I was on the road a lot, but we were singing all these songs from back in the day, but I felt like I was still writing at home. I was recording. I had new music, and I just felt like I was chained to the floor.
Right.
I really wasn't happy. Maybe some of that was being ungrateful. It was very narcissistic. I was just kind of blaming everybody else, to be honest with you, about, everything that had happened. And instead of taking accountability for myself and owning it, and I just decided it was time to get sober. And as I got sober and I started thinking about what I was going to do, I started getting inspired to do some other things. And that's when some of this music started happening. The song Because of You is actually coming out midnight tonight.
Wow.
Everywhere in the world, that whenever it's midnight in that country, the song will be available there. It'll be available on every music outlet possible. Streaming, for purchase, whatever. But the song Because of You actually is a song that I wrote for and about my wife, and about her loving me when I didn't love myself enough to even really want to continue on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
People say when you have an addiction or a drinking problem or those kind of issues, you've got to love yourself enough to make a decision to work on stopping. And my whole thing was, how do you do that when you don't love yourself? So because of her and the things that she had done in my life, I started making some changes and thinking about what I should be doing as an adult instead of blaming everybody. So anyway, now kind of what I want to do, I still want to do the music. I still want to write and record, but I want to inspire, other people out there, because the music business, man, if you know the music business, and it sounds like you do, you also know that it's infested with a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of sexual, like it's just, it can also be a really dark place if you let it go there.
Right.
And really get eaten alive if you don't stand up for yourself out there and try to stand up for what you believe in. So I'm just in a place now where I'm like, I don't need those things to enjoy myself. I don't have any room to judge anyone else. All I can do is hold myself accountable and try to set an example for my kids and for some of these young artists out there. You don't have to be wasted to be cool. You don't have to, not be able to, you know what I'm saying? I had to have a couple drinks and smoke a blunt in order to write a hit song, that I couldn't write to my full potential unless I was wasted. And how ridiculous does that sound? You know what I'm saying? Nuts, and so I just felt like I had to, and not judging. I don't have a problem with other people smoking. I grew up around marijuana, man. I mean, my mom and I have a few stepdads and they all smoked. So I've been around it from as a kid. But if you're like me and predisposed to addiction, you can't mess with it because there's no good outcome for it. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm not judging anyone. It's something I can't do. And because I can't, because of genetics, I want to make sure that my kids are educated in that area and they know what kind of risks they're taking before they start having fun when they get to be that age,
Nice. That's an amazing, thank you for sharing that with us. Super inspiring. And I'm glad to see you're in a better place. You're putting out music now. How will you kind of measure the success of, your music career going forward versus what you did in Color Me Bad? It's a different time, obviously, but you're super inspired now. Are you going to kind of compare the two, or is this just a whole new journey for you?
I think it's just a whole new journey. It's like the next chapter of the next book. Color Me Bad, and it took me a long time to figure this out too, is Color Me Bad isn't who I am. It was something I did. It was something that I loved to do with some friends that I grew up with. I actually talked to Taboo today, interesting enough. And that's one of the things that we talked about is, he was talking about the Black Eyed Peas and some of the changes that he's made in his life. And he wants to live, he loves his group, but he also has his own identity outside of that group. He's a father, a husband, there's a lot of things that he does. And I'm ready to start expanding on some of the other areas of my life, just because I feel like, and I'll always love performing those songs from the group when I go out and play. I'll love to do them, but I want to share some of the new stuff too, man. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That pretty much sums up all that I really had for you. Amazing history. I loved hearing about just all the stories that you shared, all the great music that you put out. I can't wait to check out this new single. But is there anything that you want to add on to?
I would just say the name of the song is Because of You. It's coming out at midnight. You can find it on all music outlets. It's a really good song, man. You should go check it. Let me know what you think. I'm super excited because this is actually my first debut solo anything. I've done a couple of songs and I've thrown some demos out there over the years to test the waters, but I've never officially released it. And I forgot to tell you this. The song has been placed in a movie called For the Love of Money that's got Cat Williams, it's got Keith Sweat, several, Carrie Hilson. Carrie Hilson. It's an all-black cast, great movie. It's almost, I feel like a repeat of Sex You Up in New Jack City. Like I've got a movie and I didn't see it coming. So I'm excited and I can't wait to see what the fans think about it all.